Is here also. I think it was suggested. So my understanding is what we are here to do is to report back from the breakout groups and maybe discuss a little bit about next steps and maybe sort of how people can get involved in those next steps. So I was co-leading with Eve the breakout group on privacy attacks and auditing. This was sort of prompted in that I was approached by Salil about helping to lead an effort to build part of the library for OpenDP to support attacking proposed algorithms. And the questions we were dealing with were, what are the types of algorithms we should be attacking? What is the role of sort of attacks in conversations about privacy? I think we spent a lot of time discussing what kind of makes privacy attacks compelling, and maybe having sort of a group therapy session about, privacy attacks that seemed very compelling and yet were not received the way they should have been. I said some things about the census, only to later realize John Abowd was watching on Zoom, but fortunately, that part is public. He knows what happened. So, I think the main things that were sort of brought up. One was kind of, a wish list. It would be very nice if attacks had a much more kind of binary nature. Things are broken versus things are not. And I think different use cases are more or, lend themselves more or less to that. The use cases that maybe do lend themselves to that are more like identifying bugs. You have every intention of writing a 1DP algorithm. You just want to make sure you didn't mess up. Any evidence that your algorithm is not 1DP is fairly convincing to you, versus, I think what we deal with a lot are people who are using entirely different approaches to privacy, that really suffer from fundamental flaws, and needing to convince them of a much more sort of open-ended and ambitious thing, where it's much easier for them to kind of resist any particular evidence we provide. So I think that was probably the biggest theme of the discussion. I don't know, do you feel there's any other? Okay. So maybe I can, I think the next steps is to basically create sort of a working group on how we're going to sort of develop this library and identify what our goals over short, medium, and long term should be and what it will provide. I certainly hope there are people in the breakout group and in this room who would like to be involved in that. And I think these are the same questions we're going to be dealing with, right? Sort of what are the intended uses? Where are attacks being used to make arguments in favor of or against certain deployments of privacy, deployments of privacy technologies, and certain uses of them, and how they're used in different contexts? And what are the technical tools that a library could provide to basically help people in providing the evidence for those conversations? I think I'd leave it there. And so I hope people will get involved.
So it's great to hear about attack session, because I think actually a lot of the discussion is similar to the things we were discussing. Just to give a quick overview of what we did in our session, we talked a little bit about privacy frameworks, and then our goal was to try to get people thinking about responsible uses of DP and OpenDP, specifically again to seed a working group around these issues. So we had people brainstorm about their worst case scenarios around OpenDP deployments, and then also best case visions of what are we kind of working towards. And then kind of drilling down into the different needs of stakeholders, challenges, and tensions around the open problems for these different stakeholders. And Alex can tell us a little bit about the themes.
Yes, so some of the themes were that there are a few different ways that things can go wrong. They can go wrong from a privacy perspective. We talked a lot about cases of privacy washing, where a company may be deploying differential privacy in order to meet some sort of privacy checkbox, but they're not choosing a small value of epsilon, or they're otherwise not making choices that provide meaningful privacy protection. And we also talked about cases where the utility might not be sufficient, that the implementation might not be designed to capture everything that you would need from a utility standpoint. For example, you might miss cases in a medical data set or someone had a severe but rare health outcome, and that's not reflected in the published data. And this could lead to severe consequences at a societal level. We also talked about how to make differential privacy easier to use, and what sorts of tools would be needed from a usability standpoint, in order to ensure that these bad outcomes don't happen. And we distributed a bunch of worksheets to collect resources that would be relevant for future discussions in the working group. And we're interested to hear from anyone who would like to join the working group. And I hope that the discussions that we had today will be a good starting point for initiating